If you or someone you know is struggling with alcoholism or addiction, do not hesitate to reach out for help. You can find numerous free resources on our website, thebeginagainpodcast.com, and there are tons of resources and support networks available online, in person, or just a phone call away. You don't have to face this challenge alone. Welcome to the Begin Again podcast. I'm your host, Gary Menkes. On the Begin Again podcast, we delve into the inspiring journeys of individuals who have overcome alcoholism and addiction and emerged as true trailblazers in entrepreneurship, business, sports, and beyond. Through authentic, uplifting, and profound conversations with our guests, we aim to shatter the stigma surrounding addiction and demonstrate that recovery can be a catalyst for remarkable success, strength, and resilience. We firmly believe that by listening to these accounts, you will be empowered to unlock your own potential, instigate positive change in your life, and contribute to the creation of a better world. So, get ready to be inspired and embark on your own personal journey of growth with the Begin Again podcast. Welcome back to the Begin Again podcast. I'm your host, Gary Menkes, and joining us today is Tammy Lyn Connors. Tammy's sobriety date is March 9th, 2004, and she has been through an awful lot and a lot of struggles. But as she likes to say, by the grace of God, she's still here. And in 2021, she launched the HOP Hope podcast, Hope, Helping Other People Evolve, which is now 117 episodes in and running, sharing her struggles and her strength, experience, and hope. Her goal every day is to be a light in this world and to remind people that we can get through anything if we put our mind to it, something that I am a firm believer in. Tammy, thanks so much for being here. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I love being on other people's podcasts.
Yeah, it's fun, right? We were talking off camera, the amazing people we get to meet. And, we were talking just for 10 minutes and we started talking before we got here on Instagram and DM. And it's just a pleasure to have you. And I know you have a heck of a story, and you got some sobriety day, 2000. You've been sober for a while. That's amazing.
Yes. 19 and a half years, coming up on 20. Yes.
A big number. Congratulations. That's
great. I'm excited. I'm having a party.
As you should. Yes, you should.
I am. I hired a band. I'm just figuring out where to have it yet. I'm like literally having a party.
And you got the important part. You got the band first. That's all.
Exactly.
That's a smart way to throw a party.
Yes, for sure.
So tell us, how was it back before March 9th, 2004?
I always say my story goes farther back than I probably really even know, because I grew up in an Irish Catholic home, both sides of the family, lots of drinking, lots of playing poker on the weekends, going and grabbing the drinks for everybody. And that was normal life. That's what we did. And my father was an alcoholic addict, very abusive man to my mom. He got very sick, probably started getting sick like right in 1977, 76, right in that area, but like deathly ill. Never could figure out what was wrong with him. He ended up weighing like 95 pounds. I remember probably in, I would say, November of 1977, the doctor telling him, "John, you cannot ever touch alcohol again." And in probably January of 78, I watched him buy a 6-pack. And after that, it just went completely downhill. Like he had a third of his stomach cut out, just all kinds of things. And back in the day when they didn't know what was wrong, I mean, my dad had shock treatments. Like he would go to the hospital and they give him shock treatments to try to, because they couldn't figure out what was wrong. I'm sure now they would have been able to, but long story short, that whole year of 78, very, very sick. And then December the 7th, 1978, he drowned in our bathtub. I was 13. My mom yelled upstairs to me, call the neighbors. I ran downstairs. He was very sick, like I said. And at that point, he had taken some opiates and fell asleep in the bathtub and drowned. So 13 years old, then that's when my life started turning more, then my mom got remarried very quickly, which was okay for her because he hadn't treated her very well. And my stepdad swept her off her feet. So I went the opposite way. I went more toward the drinking and the drugging and all of that through my teenage years. And I say that because during that time, I didn't think anything of it, right? I was a partying teenager. I still graduated from high school and did all that. I got married right out of high school because I didn't want to live with my stepdad anymore. And my ex-husband, it's kind of funny when I talk about it because he drank all the time, but he was a stay-at-home, let's not go out drinker. And I was the social butterfly, like I still am to this day. And we ended up getting divorced a couple years later. But in the meantime, I ran into the love of my life. I'd known him since I was 12. He was always boyfriend to my good friends. And he had just gotten out of prison and served 18 months for grand theft auto, because that's not so bad in my head. And that was when life really changed for me then, because I lived in a house, I had all the things, and then I started dating him. Well, can't call it dating. We ended up being homeless, just he was a crack addict, alcoholic, very abusive, but I was going to be the person to change him. And he had two kids, Nick and Heather, and they were like my own kids, 18 months old and three years old when we started our relationship, I guess you would call it. So we partied a lot then, and I'm still not in the alcoholic phase yet. Okay. So am I okay to keep going here?
Oh yeah. Doing great. Love it.
Okay. So we were together, probably from 1987, before I had my son, Chad, in 1989. And then I thought, this is going to change everything. He's going to be better now, because we got a son, even though he had two kids prior, that he wasn't any better, but I was going to change him. And very abusive before this. Like in my head now, I look back and I'm like, what was wrong with you? But honestly, that was normal to me. And I hate to be like that, but that's the way that my dad treated my mom. And, they say a lot of times you go for that father figure or whatever it was that you're lacking. And it was the same thing now that I look back on it. So I had my son in 1989. And of course, then my drinking stopped. I didn't really drink as much. I didn't party as much because I had to be the responsible one to take care of Chad. And we moved into another house. 1992, I got pregnant again. Now, both my boys were born early because I would get so sick from the stress of him that, so Chad was born, he was weighed 4 pounds, 9 ounces. And then Cody, when I had Cody in 1992, he weighed 4 pounds, 15 ounces. He was born May 31st of 1992. I had finally reached my end with Scott. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't take the abuse. I couldn't take the telling me I'm cheating on him, just all the things that happens in this type of relationship. So on December 11th, 1992, Scott was going with his family to Florida to live with his grandma, and he was going to stay down there. I was finally going to be done, wash my hands, and go on with figure out my life. I've always been very independent, so I was just going to do all the things on my own. That morning, I woke up, I had to go to work. He was leaving for the airport a little bit later. And I woke up with that gut-wrenching feeling in my stomach. And I said, have you checked on Cody? And he said, no, he hasn't woke up yet. Well, I knew right then that something was wrong. And I ran in the bedroom, and he was blue. I called 911. Sorry. I did mouth to mouth. I tried to resuscitate him, and he passed away from SIDS at 6.5 months old. So needless to say, now Scott's not moving to Florida, and I got to try to rethink life because I just lost my son, which is like the biggest fear that any parent could ever have. I thank God so much in my life for my other son, Chad, because then I knew that I had to be a rock for Chad, or Chad had to be a rock for me, whichever way you wanted to look at it. But he was my everything. So, of course, we didn't split up then, and the abuse continued. And finally, in 1994, it would have been, Chad was 5. We got in a big fight. He had a screwdriver to my temple, was ready to stab me, and my stepdad walked into my house at that moment. And then that was the end. I knew my son couldn't watch this anymore, and I couldn't do this anymore. So I left him in 1994. Now, still not really drinking much. Now I move right into another relationship, and he drank a lot. He fished a lot, drank a lot. Not a bad guy. I started drinking a lot more. I started working at a golf course in 1997. So my drinking career, as I call it, was from 1997 to 2004, where that's all I did. I worked and I drank. I was very functioning. So nobody really knew I drank as much as I did. I worked at a bar. I was the manager. So I drank a lot through those years. And to say, I'd be lying if I said it was horrible through those years, because from 97 to 2002, it wasn't horrible. I just drank a lot. 2002 is when I really started getting very sick, like my dad, pancreatitis a couple times, vomiting every day, in and out of the hospitals. But through all that, no one ever said to me, you should probably quit drinking.
Yeah.
It was never, I shouldn't say that. In 2000, the doctor said, you should lay off drinking a little bit. So I did for 6 months. I drank O'Doul's and then I went back to it. So fast forward through all that drinking and stuff. Now, like I said, I worked 60, 80 hours a week. So I was always at work. So my son didn't really see me as much as I thought that he did, but he really did. So 2004, we're just going to fast forward to my stopping.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I was at work on a Saturday night. We lived in a little small town. I'd been drinking all day at work. I got off work. I sat downstairs in the basement, was drinking with everybody, partying. And I remember, it's so crazy that I can remember this because I was sitting in my boss's office and my best friend at the time, she said, we have to call 911. She's going to die. And they call 911. I get taken out on a stretcher. I'm taken to the local hospital, IVs, all that stuff, get me all hydrated and stuff. My blood alcohol was 0.399. They sent me home with a yellow piece of paper that said, refrain from drinking. That was it. That was all they said. Now, at this point, I weighed 85 pounds. My cheeks were sunk in. My eyes had that yellow film that alcoholics get, like your eyes are bloodshot, but you have that yellow film.
Sure.
Did you have that yellow film?
I think I may have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I look at people now that have it and I'm like, ooh, yeah, that's what my eyes used to look like, And so, of course, I didn't go home after the hospital because, well, for one thing, I didn't have any alcohol at my house at that moment. I couldn't go to my mom's because she wasn't going to let me drink throughout the night. So I went to a good friend's house. And this is when I say, by the grace of God, because he planned this all out this day. I drank at my friend's house all night long, all day long. I got to say my blood alcohol is probably more than 0.399 again. And I go to work and I was waitressing that day and it was a crap show. It was horrible. And I ended up the next morning being fired from my job. That was March 9th, 2004. And my bosses, I was begging them, like, you can't fire me. I'm a single mom. Chad's dad was incarcerated at this time. So after I left him, probably about 6 months later, he ended up getting 15 to 30 years. So he'd been incarcerated for a while. Yeah. So now here I am, no job, no money, trying to figure out life. And I think to myself, I'm looking out my window and I'm like, I'm going to die. If I don't change my life right now, I'm going to die within 2 weeks. That's all I could think. Because at this point, it was horrible. The yellow bile, the detox, it was horrible. I was doing shots of Listerine in the morning sometimes just to get me to where I was going. And so I was looking out the window and all I could think of was my son. When I say he was my rock again, he was in his room, 15 years old. And all I could think was, he's going to find me like I found my dad. And his dad's incarcerated and he's going to find me dead. And then he's going to either live with his dad's parents or my parents, which didn't do a good job raising either one of us. So I have got to stop now. And that's when I laid on the floor. I cried, I screamed, I begged God and said, I can't do this anymore. I surrender it completely to you. And man, has it been a whirlwind since then.
That is incredible. What a heck of a finale, if you will. I am picturing, only a couple alcoholics can get a really good laugh out of. I'm picturing you, waitressing that last day.
Oh my gosh.
But I mean, what a story though, Tammy. Oh my gosh, this, and I have been following you on Instagram and I've seen your posts about your loss and what you've been through for sure. But you said by the grace of God, you've been given the grace, and that grace was like, you knew you only had 2 weeks left. And I think it's amazing. I have heard it so many times. People have these moments. I can't put a finger on it, but I was given this moment too, where I was given this gift of surrender. At least that's how, I had been worse bottoms. I've been way worse places, but I was just sitting in my apartment and This is my sobriety. I was sitting in my apartment. I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't know what to do. I was never going to go back to AA, that's for sure. And I found myself calling AA Intergroup, and that's where I did get sober and Alcoholics Anonymous. But I was given that similar gift, and I can't put a finger on it, but I was given it, and things were different from then on. And it was, first time I went to a meeting, I wasn't just checking the box. And if some stranger came up to me and gave me his number, like prior, I'd be like, keep walking, pal. Like this time, like, all right, it still doesn't make any sense to me, but I'm going to call them because I want to, I want what these people have. They seem to be happy and they seem to be getting it. I've been struggling in and out for 4 years at the time. And I laughed at the time frame too. I was thinking back in 2002, you and I probably would have got along pretty well. I was pedal to the metal back then. Like, wow,
Right.
look out. First time I went to rehab was 2002. My sobriety date's 2006. So
Okay.
I was in and out for 4 years, and it was like I've heard my sponsor had said this, and it just related to me so much that I was involved in a fight every single day. I was engaged in a fight every single day, and I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
And that was so me. I was, especially for those 4 years, I was the last person to realize I had a problem. Everyone else around me certainly knew it. I just, I was a little late to that party.
Yeah.
But what happened? So there you go. You have this moment, right? And this is your sobriety date. How do you go, and where do you go from here? How do you start getting the help that you need?
Well, so I say that God placed people in my life for years to help me with this. I had worked when I worked at the golf course. I worked with a girl named Molly, and her parents are pastors. And I can remember when they would come in, they're the nicest people. They would come in and I'd be like, oh my gosh, they're looking at me like I'm the devil because they know me, right? They can see right through me, even though, like I said, I was very functioning. So a lot of people, when I quit, were like, really? You don't really have a problem? And yeah, I do. So I called Molly right away because I knew her mom could help me. And so I called her and I was like, I don't know what to do, Molly. She's like, call my mom right now. And her mom lived just very, very close to where I lived. And I went over to her house thinking she thinks I'm the devil and knocked on her door. And I'm going to tell you what, she opened that door and just welcomed me in and sat me down at her kitchen table. She prayed with me. She gave me a Bible. She said, this is what I want you to do. And I know she did this because she knew that I needed to occupy my time. I say this, and I don't know if you felt this way too, but when I quit drinking, that bottle was my best friend. And that was my everything. And now I have to figure out what to do without it. So she had me read the Psalms. She said, every day I want you to read, like day 1, Psalms 1, 11, 21, 31, 41, 51. Day 2, Psalms 2, 12, 22, 32. So I listened to her and I did exactly what she said. Now, when I say I was blessed to have 2 sons and 2 bonus kids from my ex, I was also blessed that he showed me AA and Al-Anon. So I knew I had to go to AA, and he had a cousin that was sober. So I called him and I went to my first meeting for me that day. So for 6 weeks, and when I say that God is so faithful and he will get us through as long as we're doing what we should be doing. For 6 weeks, I started my morning at an AA meeting, and then I go to my ex-sister-in-law's house. Then I go to another AA meeting, and I go to my friend Tanya and Greg's house. Then I go to another AA meeting, and we would sit at my friend Tammy and Ed and Bridget and Wes's house, where my son would usually stay at. I did this for 6 weeks straight, every single day. And every single day I would knock on their door. I thank them every year for this because every day they just open their door and let me come in and sit. Sometimes I cry, sometimes we'd laugh, sometimes we wouldn't say anything, but they knew I needed that because I had to occupy my time.
Yeah.
And so those first 6 weeks, I borrowed $500 from my ex-mother-in-law. That's all the money I had. I had to call people, my landlord, and be like, hey, this is what I'm going through. And everybody understood, and God got me right through it, for those first 6 weeks. And then I finally got a job and was able to like waitress again and be on my feet and do all of that. And then it's just been, I think back 19 and a half years, and I'm sure you probably think this too, like it's really been that long because it's a long time.
It is a long time. It's amazing.
It is. But we can get through it. That's the biggest thing. It's all about, when I talk about those 6 weeks, like when I talk to people, I'm like, how bad do you really want it? And if you surrender and you really, how bad was it when you went to go get that drug or that drink? You would go to any length to get it.
Any lengths.
I'll go to any length to stay sober, no matter
Yes.
what, because I'm never going back there. People say don't get complacent. I'm like, I'm telling you, God has told me you will never go back there. You have too much hope and a story to share with people,
Yeah, you do.
So,
I
yeah,
love that. I'll say it's one of my biggest, we talk about fear a lot, right? And how I
right.
put fear on like anything. And I think I do have one healthy fear, and that fear is going back out. Like I know I have another drunk in me. I don't know if I have another recovery in me. Like I
Mhm.
really mean that. And when I see people that have gone back out and they come back in, I have like an extra, I don't know if it's extra is the right word, but I have an extra little, compassion for them, or
Yes,
I admire them so much because sometimes it's a lot easier to go back out and it's a lot more difficult to come back in. And
yes,
you're talking to someone, like I said, I struggled in and out, for 4 years. I never put 90 days together, except for this time, since my actual sobriety date, right? And
yeah,
you talked about giving up the bottle and how difficult it was, and you were going to 3 meetings a day, which is it's beautiful. And yes, God carried you the whole entire time, and you had all these beautiful people in your life that opened the door. You're like all of it, right? That's
right,
higher power. That's God at work. I mean, that's clear as day to me.
for sure.
And for me, it was my entire identity. Like it was who I was. I was this on the good days, I was this partier, nonstop. And then it got really dark, and I'd be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'd be the happiest guy in the place, and a drop of a dime, I'd be the nastiest guy. And most of the time, it was like all the above in a matter of minutes with me. I
Right,
was all over the place. And so, but it was my identity. It was everything that I knew. Only thing I knew was to be drinking, partying. And then it was like, who am I without this? And that was the hard part for me. I think looking back, you don't know it when you're in it. All I knew is I needed to change stuff. And, I said this recently too. There was like this block of time, probably like my first year, where I really kind of stepped away from like my best pals and my boys and my crew. And, I feel even to this day, like there's this chunk of time that I missed in all their lives. And I probably did, or it probably didn't at the same time. I probably didn't miss that much, but I needed to. Like, first of all, I'm probably going to lose all these boys, all my buddies. Like, how am I going to, I know them my whole life. I love them, but they're probably gone. This job, I'm supposed to like go out and entertain people. Like, probably not going to, further my career, and probably not going to last much longer. But, both were completely wrong. Like I actually got moved up. 3 months, I'm going to say 90 days, but 3 or 4 months into sobriety is when I got a really big promotion at work and moved into a totally different role, and a role of production. And, my career in a way took off from there. And my buddies, like I say this a lot too, I don't mean to repeat myself, but I'm going to chat with them, and, we bust this every single one of them. There's like 15 of us, and we bust each other's chops every single day. And, they're all still there, but
yeah,
the people I've met also, I it's not just them, and I do love my boys. Everyone knows that, but the people I've met in sobriety now, like I have relationships with them, and it's not just my sponsor. It's like a group of us, we're in a chat too, and it's
yeah,
all about sobriety, and it's all about, self-improvement, even though we might
right,
say it's about, trying to do what's best. Like I didn't talk this way, Tammy, like, oh, that's God in your life. I can see it. I
right.
wasn't aware of that stuff. Now I pray for that awareness. I pray for God's will, and pray for keep my eyes open to see where he is, because he's always with us, right?
Always,
And
always.
your message is, it's screaming through there, and you're glowing too. It's all you've been through, and the smile you have, it's beautiful. And that's God too.
Oh, for sure. And I say that, and I'm truly blessed. Like I wake up every day just grateful that I get to open my eyes. And
Mhm.
if I can just make one person smile that day, then good for me. That's what I like to do. But one thing that I like to talk about too a little bit for people, because I feel like when we go through life, I say this about you and me both. We don't walk outside and now all of a sudden there's this great big bubble around us, right?
Please,
And
God.
nothing's going to
Yes.
harm you. Everything in life's going to be peachy and great, right? Not at
Nope.
all,
Nope.
and that's where we have to use those tools and those friends and those people that we've met or people that we know to
Yeah.
use those tools to get us through these days, because life's not easy. Life's
No.
not easy at all. And we go through struggles, but there's so many people that I talk to, like, I'll be like, why'd you start smoking again? Oh, well, my neighbor made me mad. Oh, so you picked up a cigarette, you know, or why'd you start drinking again? I lost a loved one, so I decided to drink again. And I say this because, as I've said, we can get through anything, but we got to have the tools and we got to have the mindset to get through it. So I say this so in 2012, my bonus son, Nicholas, who was 18 months old when he started being my bonus son. I don't call him Step because I think Step just sounds like Cinderella to me. So I say bonus kids, but unfortunately on February 16th, he was killed in a single car drinking and driving accident. 26 years old, one of the best men you'd ever meet in your entire life. He had a heart of gold. He'd do anything for anybody. His song was Simple Man. He just really was. Yeah.
That's my song.
Is it? Yep.
Yeah,
and that was Nick's song. And that's what he was. And so we lost him, and it was tragic. And it's crazy because I think about, I'm a big one too, a lot on spiritual warfare. When you were talking about like, you're going to lose your friends, your job's not going to be good. You know, that's just the devil talking to us, and it's whether we listen to him or not. Right. Yeah. And so I came to this realization just not too long ago. So the night after Nick passed away, I had this dream, and it was Nick and I, and we were in Detroit at a bar. Well, Nick and I never drank together because by the time when I quit drinking, I wasn't old enough. Right. So, but he was handing me this big, it was either a margarita or a martini. I'm talking like giant. And he said to me, "It's okay, Tammy, you can drink it." And I was like, "No, I can't." And he said, "Yes, you can. Go ahead. Everybody will understand." So I woke up from that dream, and I never really thought about it. I've talked about that dream before, but just recently in the last 6 months, I was like, man, that was like, and I never like to give Satan this much credit, but that was like him being in my dream saying, everybody will understand if you start drinking again after this loss.
Yeah.
Now I think about it like that. At that time, I didn't even think about it. I was like, God, that was a nightmare, you know? But so I think about things like that and the thoughts in our head that we have to overcome. And in 2020, I say for everybody, we all know what 2020 was like, right? I said it started with Kobe and Gianna, and it just went after that, right? I was heartbroken with Kobe only because my son grew up so much with Kobe, and it was just heartbreaking for everybody.
Yeah, you see Kobe behind me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't think I've ever cried for a celebrity that passed away like I did Kobe. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah, I'm with you.
On February 14th, Valentine's Day, my best friend Josh, who had been clean for 5.5 years, took a Percocet on the night before and passed away because it had fentanyl in it. And so we lost him on Valentine's Day. Like, crushed my soul. He was 34, and just like, I was like, why? You know, it was just, but we didn't know it was fentanyl at the time. We thought it was either, because it was right when COVID started. He had his inhaler next to him. So we thought either maybe he had a heart attack, COVID, or he had a horrible asthma attack. We didn't find out until 2 months later that it was fentanyl. Well, that was traumatic and hard to get through. And he was like, he brought so many people to sobriety that, I mean, like his pallbearers were 9 guys that he brought to sobriety. That's just who he was. Wow. So it was crushing when we found out it was fentanyl. But then in 2020, on April 3rd, my good friend in Arizona, her ex-husband-to-be shot her 14 times in her car and killed her. Now, I'm saying all this for people to know that you don't have to go drink or drug when things happen. So here I am. I'm the light, right? I like to be the rainbow unicorn, or whatever you want to call me. That's what my friends call me, the Care Bear with the gold, you know, everything's good. So here my friends are in Arizona, like suffering, and I can't go because we're not allowed to fly, you know? So I'm back here trying to figure out how to navigate to help them. And then I went out there in June. We had her celebration of life in July and came back home. And shortly after that, my mom went in the hospital. Went in the hospital. She always went in the hospital. She had COPD. So she was in the hospital for a week, ended up going to the nursing home. No COVID, back and forth, hospital, nursing home. And then on a Wednesday, she got COVID in the hospital and ended up passing away that following Monday. Like, it was like just quick, home, okay. And then bam, can't get her oxygen up. And then she passed away. So that was 2020. So like I said, 2020 was horrible for everybody. But through all 3 of those tragic, those are tragedies in my life.
Yes, they are.
I never had to drink or drug again. I didn't have to, because for one thing, I have God, and whatever your higher power is, okay,
Yep.
but I'm 100% going to tell you that if you start believing in God and surrender to him, your life will change dramatically. And having that, and having the tools and the people in my life to talk to and know that I can get through these things. And what good am I going to do to anybody if I start drinking again? None.
You know, you've been through so much, and if at the very least, and I don't know if I'm going to word this properly, but you're like the definition. If you give yourself the excuse to go back out and drink, go see Tammy Lyn Connors before you do that. Look at what her story is, and then tell me if you match that, and she can tell you that you don't have to go back out there and drink again. You had that dream too. That's where you hear like the disease never is always there, and it's always with you, right? And
oh yeah,
that's the disease. You call it, the devil, which same thing, right? It doesn't matter whatever you word it, but that's the disease. For me, I call that's your disease, like waiting for your moment of weakness. In your dream, it was this gigantic fishbowl of alcohol saying it's okay, because I'm human too. You think stuff, wow, if something really awful happened, I wonder if I would go back out, and I have you in my life to remember that, and that's my disease talking to me too. That's not normal thinking.
No,
for any man or woman, right? Anytime. But if you're sick, you have a disease like I do and you do, these are the things that pop in our heads, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you talked about the voices in our heads. I'm reading a book right now with a bunch of other guys right now as we speak. I think the name of the book is The Untethered Soul.
And oh my gosh, I knew you were going to say it. I knew you were going to say it. Love that book.
So this started in the pandemic. My sponsor's like, listen, we need to do something. Like, we can't get to meetings. Like, it was him, and it's probably 8 of us total. And we read the big book, right? And we read another book, and then it just evolved. And here we are almost 4 years later, and we're still reading a book, not, necessarily an AA book, but it's it's a self-improvement mind book. And this is what we're reading now. And everyone's like, we can't put it down, and loving it. And we read it every Monday night at 6:00, and then we talk about it. But it's about the voices, the other voices. And the fact is that, if don't wish, like, those voices are never going to leave. They're never going to leave, but it's up to you, to us, who we give the power to. And, those voices of fear, or you can do this, or this is going to happen. I say fear all the time. All my fears, or 99% of my fears, are projections into the future. And when I'm just centered, and I'm in today, and I'm with my higher power, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Like right now, still kind of like crazy to say, but right now I'm sitting exactly where I'm supposed to be. And you and I are supposed to be talking right now, which is really, it's a beautiful thing, but it's still a wild concept to think about.
Right. Yeah.
And we're hearing your amazing story, and you're going and again, the loss is incredible, but you're just sitting here beaming, and you are a light. You're clearly a light.
Thank you.
But so you start the podcast pretty soon after this. So when does it hit you? Like, I mean, does it hit you like, do you realize that you're kind of helpful to people? And does it hit you that, I want to help more people on maybe on a bigger scale? How do you start? Tell us about how you get to where you are with the podcast. And now, like, your identity, or your brand, for lack of a better word, is to help people. And how do you get there? How do you get to there?
Well, it's kind of funny because I started it actually as a blog. I wanted to start a blog. This was probably 2018, 19. I met a group of people, and I wanted to start a blog just to help people. That's just what I like to do. Always been the helper. So I went to an event, and it was an overdose awareness event. And it was pretty morbid, actually. It was one of my friends here. It's called Team Recovery. He's a recovering heroin addict. I think 8 years now. Like, I think he was in rehab 16 times and on life support 4 times. Just a crazy story. But he's got this great team now, and it's a whole place. It's called Team Recovery. But he did a video shoot, and we were at a funeral home, and they opened the casket, and it had needles and bottles in it, and just showing like this is the reality of what's going to happen.
Sure.
And I knew I wanted to call my blog Hope, and or no, I didn't know what I was going to call it. Sorry, at that moment. And the one lady was talking. She was going to share the next day. It was overdose awareness, Nina, and she was going to talk about her daughter that she lost. And somebody said, "Well, who's going to share hope?" And I was like, hope, that's the word. That's it. That's what I want. So I was leaving. And it's funny, the guy that was going to share hope, his name was Juan. And he was actually my first live interview when I started my podcast. So I'm driving home and I'm like, hope, helping other people. And I kept hearing from God, evolve. And I'm like, no, don't like evolve. So I kept trying to think of an E, right? And I get home and I call my friend Lori and I was like, I finally figured out the name of my blog. And she's like, oh, great. I can't wait for people to hear how you evolved. And I was like, well, okay, then it's helping other people evolve. So that was the blog. And I did that a little bit. And then one day I was like, I need to do a podcast. I just need people to hear these stories of recovery. I just need people to know that you're not alone in your struggle. Right. And so I plan on doing it in 2020. Actually, I was going to start on my sobriety date in 2020. And then that happened with Josh and then COVID and then everything. And then I made a promise to myself, January of 2021. I said, you will start your podcast on your sobriety date. And I happened to be in San Diego at the time with some friends. And I'm like, I have to launch this today. I have to get this. And they were all going out to dinner. They're like, you going with us? I'm like, no, I have to do this today. And I ended up launching it that day. And then God said, I want other people. I don't want just recovery. There's so many struggles out here that people need to hear.
Yes.
And so I just started praying and reaching out. And I'm telling you, 85% of the people I never met in my entire life that are on my podcast. Amazing. Probably 75% of them I met on TikTok, just following them. And then I just reach out and say, hey, will you be on my podcast? And most people don't think I'm too crazy and say yes. And the journey of it has been, and I'm sure you're finding this out too, it's been incredible. For one thing, I hear somebody's story and it helps me. They share their story and it helps them. And then I might get a message from somebody that says, hey, I listened to Gary's podcast today and it was amazing. I just interviewed a guy the other day, Lou, and I met him on TikTok. He works out a lot. I work out a lot. And one day I saw him say, it's been 1 year since I lost my daughter. And I shot him a message just like, so sorry about your loss. And then later I said, I don't know if you'd ever be willing to share your story, and he's like, yeah, I'd never done that before. And then he commented on my Instagram and said, thank you. Your podcast was amazing and it helped me get through. His daughter passed away. She took a drug and had fentanyl in it. Same thing, And so it's just having people be able to use a platform to share their stories, just everyday people, and that's what I say. And I say, it's like we're sitting in a coffee shop, just having a conversation about life. And it's so good for everybody. It's just a great feeling. And for me to be able to have somebody say, thank you, you helped me get through my struggle. Or I had one guy that he was sharing, and then he talked about, he was driving down a dirt road and he had a pistol in his car with him. He's like, I got out of my car. He's like, Tammy, I was going to commit suicide that day. He's like, and I said to God, if you're here, God, you have to show me a sign right now. And he said, the wind picked up and started blowing. He's like, I knew right then. I got back in my car. I went straight to my pastor. I talked to him. And afterwards he said, I've never shared that with anybody but my pastor. He's like, thank you. I got it off my chest.
Yes.
And that's why we do what we do. That's it.
Absolutely. And you're making me feel good only because it's so similar for me. I was just overcome. The word podcast, it wasn't even on the radar. I like listening to podcasts, I like watching, YouTube videos and inspirational stuff like sports, as you can see behind my shoulder. But, a podcast was the last thing. And I was also I wasn't a social media person. I didn't want my face anywhere. And now all of a sudden, I don't know how this came, but I'm way out there and vulnerable, I guess, and recover out loud. That term was it? I didn't even know what that term was, but I knew I wanted to do something, and I knew that, someone was talking about podcasting, and well, what would I talk about? It's probably a million sports podcasts, and what are you passionate about? I was passionate about this stuff, but I don't know how I would do that. But long story short, I started it, but just exactly almost word for word for you. I'd be sitting listening to these amazing comeback stories and miracle stories, and I'm just more people need to hear this. And if we can go out and help one person today, inspire one person today to realize that, just like you had said, you are not alone. You completely change your life around. You don't have to live this way anymore. like, so that's where it was born. And
Yeah.
then I think we had said off camera too, right? Like there can't be enough of us. There can't be enough of these podcasts or blogs, or
Right.
can't be enough of them. Like,
Yeah.
crowded market. There's no such thing. Like the more people that can hear this, and again, I keep repeating myself, but if we can help one person today and that person helps one person, and what a beautiful way, and a beautiful thing to do. I haven't met one person, but on my who's come on, and I'm dropping an episode weekly. I haven't met one of them, but now like I know so many of them, and I have relationships with them. Like literally, we're texting all the time, and
Yeah.
we had said all off camera, like the people I've met in such a short amount of time, like yourself. Like I'm listening to you, and met when I said we're sitting here for a reason right now, and we're talking like we're in a coffee shop, but it's a coffee shop of hope and inspiration. We have to use hope for sure, and it's behind you, and yeah, it's what beams out of you, Tammy. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think, and the thing is like you said, we can't have enough of these. We need this because there's so much negativity in the world, and the media just is like slamming it in everybody's face all the time. Yeah. People are like, unfortunately, drawn to that.
No,
where
of course.
We want them to be drawn more to this, to know that there's good people out there. There's people that are willing to help you. And the biggest thing, like I said, that you don't struggle alone. I've talked to 4 people in the last 2 months that were ready to commit suicide. And through our conversation, I started talking to them a little bit about things that I've been through. And they're like, wait, I'm not alone. I'm like, no, you're not. And that's what I feel like so many people feel like, and especially after 2020, like you're alone in your struggle. And I love that you guys got together and did your book club, and you're still doing that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because that's that power of unity that we need,
It is. And I got to give him all the credit. And honestly, I do. I think every week, like I say, I'm just like, I'm overcome by it. I'm like, listen, sitting around with, 8 other dudes, reading a book on Zoom, like that wasn't how I used to do things. Even in sobriety, obviously sobriety, you go to a meeting and you share your stuff and your dark stuff, and you get over it and you work through it and you get all the tools. But this is a little different. It's the same, but it's a little different. It's the same concept, right? Like you're sharing stuff, and we're talking about real life stuff. We're reading this. Now we're reading this book. Everyone's loving it. And, it's not how I was raised, right? You're not allowed to say anything to anybody.
Oh, right. Never.
Now it's like,
no.
And I say that, Tammy, I'm still I'm still wired that way. Like when there's stuff, when I'm in a bad place, I know I'm supposed to maybe call my sponsor or call somebody else or share it with someone. I sit in it and I stew in it. And then, I wait a day or two. And then I finally like, listen, this is what I've been told to do. So I'll call him, and, guess what? I feel a whole lot better in about 10 minutes. And I'm like, man, I should have, saved myself the last 48 hours of this misery and anxiety. But, I'm thinking, what are you going to do? Right.
And the thing is about that, I feel like I tell people too, they always say in AA, I'm pretty sure, especially years ago, like that phone weighs 100 pounds, right? To pick it up and call somebody. Yeah. So I always say the phone weighs like 1,000 pounds, like you pick it up and then and throughout me talking to people, usually it's them doing all the talking. And I might say 2 or 3 words. And then at the end, they're like, thank you so much. Now my phone only weighs 50 pounds. And you helped me. And I'm like, I didn't really do anything. You just needed to share. You just need to get it off your chest.
Get it out. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's 100%. Big.
And you mentioned the community and, sharing with like-minded people, like you said, there's a couple of guys, they have this, I have a 10 and a 9-year-old, and one of my good buddies in the group, he does too. And he goes through the same stuff. Like, he's like coaching my son's baseball team. I had so much freaking anxiety. I wanted to like lose it. I'm like, oh man, me too. And I thought it was just me, like this, I thought it was just this, alcoholic, anxious dude out in the baseball field, which I love, but it's the same thing. My point is, like, you share this stuff, there's someone that can completely relate, and just kind of sets you down. It relaxes you, I guess. And again, what are we saying? You're not alone, right? It's going to be okay.
Right. There's one thing that I want to say about that book you're reading right now. One of my favorite parts of that book, and I don't know if you guys have how far into the book are you?
We're not even a quarter in.
Did you read the part where he asks, I think it's at the beginning of the book, where he's like, if you were sitting on a park bench next to yourself, would you say the things that you say to yourself to that person?
Yeah, no, we did. That's like the inner, right? And that's what we're, I'm in a chat also we're all separate jobs. We're in a Bloomberg chat where we talk all day. Like, hey, how's your inner roommate doing today? And
Yeah.
it's your inner roommate. And
Yeah.
who's winning? Who's winning? Like,
Right.
sometimes I like to say, I don't know if it's in the book, but I like to tell that voice, like, so I'm gonna shut the fuck up. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
And some
Yeah.
days, and this happened to me, I don't know if I shared this, but this happened to me years ago. I was in a really, really bad place. I had 2 young ones. I was really bad place financially. I was really struggling. I was scared. I was really scared. And it was someone in the program said, listen, when you have these fears, just sit there and tell them to stand the F down and to shut the F up. And I sat there all day long and I said it, and nothing in my circumstances changed at all. And I felt a million times better. So like, I take that to this day and I actually share it with other people. The same guy I'm telling you about, like, he struggles. I'm like, you got to tell it to us, shut the F up. And
Yep.
it works. So it's that inner roommate, according to the
Yep.
book. Right. And I think we can all relate to the voices in our head. And it's like, who are you going to give the power to? I think the book also says, like, what if you have like an argument, you have to have have it out with your inner roommate. And we always joke, like, don't do it in public. You'd be talking to yourself walking down 7th Avenue. Right. Well, actually, walking down 7th Avenue in New York City, it's probably a pretty normal thing.
I was gonna say it's probably pretty normal there, right?
No
Yeah.
doubt about it.
I don't know if you've ever listened to David Goggins at all.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And he's the biggest one too, that I always say that too. Either you learn to control your mind or your mind's going to control you. Period.
It's hard, but it's true. But you watch him, like, and you see the transformation that guy's made. Like,
oh yeah.
Look at the shape he is in physically versus, that guy's incredible.
Yeah. So yeah, it's all about our mindset, but we got to work on ourselves too. It's not, like I said, it's a daily process, learning, growing, loving yourself, learning the things that you can do, you can't do, and just learning. I think it's
absolutely.
A big part. Yeah.
On that note, like, I feel like I've been given this kind of gift of an open mind. Like, I've realized a few years ago, like, I don't know anything. I don't know, and that's okay. I'm not supposed to, like, if I think I know everything, I'm blocked and there's no growth, and I'm not going to learn anything. Right. But today, I am not that way. I'm not that way. And I love to learn, and I want to use this brain of mine and grow and learn for the rest of my life, as long as I'm here, and you bring up Kobe. I got to bring up Kobe too, because, Kobe represents something for me. I actually wasn't even a fan of his when he played. I became a fan of his now. And now, like, if I watch him on YouTube, he's my number one guy, but he represents 3 things for me. He represents being the hardest working man in the room. He represents being a family man, because he was such a, famous family man with his girls. And he represents life short, because, 2 things. Obviously, we had our diseases, and I very, very easily could not be sitting here. That's not like blasphemy. That's real. But also 4 years ago, I was walking to work sober, man, and felt like I thought I had some heartburn, and I ended up having a widowmaker heart attack.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and I did have 2 little kids. So that's what Kobe represents for me. Like, that's probably really why he's my guy. That life's short, those 3 things, and he's I can't say enough about him. But
yeah.
So where can we find you, Tammy?
Okay, so honestly, on my platforms, I have just my name, Tammy Lyn Connors.
Okay.
Because it's just easiest that way, except for, like, my podcast is Hope. And on Apple, Spotify, Audible, all of them, but you got to put in the periods, H period, O period, E period, E period, in order to find it. But I'm on all those, and my YouTube is just Tammy Lyn Connors, also the Lyn with 1 N. And
Gotcha.
One thing I wanted to say too, real quick, is you're living out.
No, not real quick. Take your time. Go.
Okay. As you're living out your purpose, which is what we're supposed to do. Back in June, I just want to share this a little bit, because it's been such a great thing for me. I started what I call, so back in 21, I was going to do 50 States of Hope. I was going to take my Jeep. I have a Gladiator. I was going to drive to every state and interview at least one person in each state. Well, then I was in Arizona at the time, and I drove to California. It cost me almost $400 some just in gas to drive to do one podcast interview. Actually, it was my friend that was murdered. I interviewed her son and his future wife, because they took custody of the 2 younger girls. So anyways, I interviewed them. But so gas wise, I couldn't do the 50 States of Hope. I put it on hold. And then I went to an event last year in December, and it was called Acoustic Vibes by Nate Hicks. And it was just a night of saxophone and music and poetry. And it was just a cool night. And I left there and I thought, why can't I do a night of hope? Why can't I do something like that?
Yeah.
Back in June, I did a night of hope. I interviewed 3 people live. My one friend lost 2 daughters to overdose, and she has a nonprofit called Not in Vain for moms who lost children to addiction. My trainer, my personal trainer, I don't know if you've seen any of my gym videos.
I've seen you lifting the weights.
So he served 16 years in prison for armed robbery at 18 years old. He got out of jail in 21 and opened a gym here in the city, and he works with all the inner city kids. Just a fantastic man. He's 36 years old. And then I interviewed another friend of mine who's on a weight loss journey that lost a lot of weight. So then I had that Nate Hicks sing acoustic music. I had some appetizers and stuff, and I got donations from different gyms and things like that. And I donated the money to 2 nonprofits in the area. I donated it to the Not in Vain, the lady that spoke, and then I donated it to Open Door Ministries, which is a rehab for men here in Toledo that they don't have to have insurance. They don't ever refuse anybody. Wow. So that's what I did. Well, then, of course, now I'm going to do these nights of hope all over the United States is my plan. And about a month ago, I was like, I probably should do one right before Christmas. Well, I was trying to figure out who I was going to get to speak and all this. And God said, you're going to speak. And I was like, okay. He's like, nobody's really heard your story lately. It's always everybody else's story. So 2 weeks ago, about a month ago, I interviewed a guy that was in prison for 30 years for murder and attempted murder. He got out in 21. He met his wife. She sang in a choir there at his prison. And then they became pen pals. They ended up getting married. Him and his wife are now senior pastors at a church about an hour away from me. And they do prison ministry with the prisoners' families. So when I decided to do my night of hope, I'm doing it on December 12th. Hold on, I can show you real quick.
Yeah.
A night of hope, and then it's Toys for Hope.
Look at that.
So what's going to happen is we're getting toys for the children of the inmates.
That's amazing.
So I'm setting boxes up in different areas, cities, places, and so I'm so excited about it because I cannot. And we decided what we're going to do then is they're going to a prison this week and getting a bunch of names of the kids, and then we're going to have a party where the guardians bring the kids and they get to open their gifts. So we're going to say they're from the parents, of course. Right. And we're just going to do a pizza party and have Santa and an elf there and all that. So I'm super excited.
Incredible. That's incredible. When is this?
So I talked about that because one day I want to come to New York and do a night of hope.
Let's go.
Okay.
Let's do it. I'm here for you.
All right.
I'd be honored if I was included in that. I would love to help that. So that I think it's incredible concept, incredible thing you're doing. I'd love to be a part of that.
Awesome. Yeah, because I just want to do them all over the United States. I just want to bring hope to everybody.
You're going to do it. You're absolutely going to do it for sure.
Yeah. So I just wanted to share that with you because I'm excited.
No, I love that. I'm glad you did. It's amazing. I was going to joke with you, like when you hire someone, do they have to have like a record?
Right. I know. Somebody asked me, they're like, a lady asked me the other day, she's like, have you ever interviewed anybody from prison? I'm like, oh, good Lord, lots. Lots. And not just like in prison for minor things like murder, for crying out loud, but how people can be redeemed and how they change their life is what we all need to hear,
Absolutely. 100%. I think it's beautiful. So we're going to put all of your socials on all the show notes so we can find you for sure. And Instagram, is that one of your main kind of places where you're?
I do Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I do them all. I just try to be all over the place.
All right, we're going to put them all on, and we're going to promote your podcast, which I think is beautiful, and we want to follow you with this new Night of Hope across the country, which is such a beautiful idea. I think it's wonderful.
I'm excited about it. So awesome.
Well, thanks so much for being here, Tammy.
Can't wait to have you on my podcast.
I can't wait. I'm in whenever we'll get
all right. We'll get it all set up.
I'll be there. I would look forward to it. I feel like I can talk to you all day, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again very soon.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for coming, Tammy. I love what you're doing. You have a really beautiful concept, and you are definitely a light. You're a light in my life today. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Take care.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to another powerful episode of the Begin Again podcast. We sincerely appreciate your time and support. We hope that today's conversation has ignited a spark within you, affirming that recovery is not only attainable, but can also be a wellspring of strength and resilience. Our ultimate goal is to make a difference in someone's life every single day. By sharing these stories of redemption, we strive to empower you and inspire you to unlock your fullest potential, facilitate positive transformations, and contribute to creating a better future for yourself, for your loved ones, and the world at large. If you know someone who could benefit from listening to our show, please share it with them. And if you resonate with our mission and feel compelled to do so, we would greatly appreciate your support through a 5-star review, following us on Instagram, and subscribing to our YouTube channel, The Begin Again Podcast. The more positive reviews we receive and the wider our message spreads, the greater our collective ability to help others realize that change is possible in their own lives. Thank you once again for being part of our community. May you be blessed on your own journey of personal growth and transformation.